Let us pray.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom and understanding, with thy unworthy servants here gathered together, in thy name do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations. And grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interest, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and the happiness of the King, the public will, peace and tranquility of St. Lucia, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all evermore. Amen.
Good morning, members, and on behalf of the Parliament, please accept our most sincere apologies for the delayed start. But I want to thank the Office of the Prime Minister, especially the Ministry of Finance, the Legislative Drafting Section of the Attorney General's Chambers, the staff of the Printry, and most especially the staff of the Parliament for ensuring that we can start even at this late hour. Members are aware that there was a change to one of the documents, and that required signing off from the Ministry of Finance, then back to the Attorney General's office, back to the Parliament, had to be printed, but we have accomplished that. And I want to thank all of the aforementioned people for the diligence and hard work, and to also thank you for your patience while you awaited this happening. I wish to advise that I have received correspondence informing me of the absence of the members for Labrie, Ancillary Canneries, Dennery South, and Grosley, who are away on official business. The member from Mico South has also notified me of his absence, and we are well aware of the absence of the member for Castries South East, who is away on medical leave, but I'm pleased to advise that I spoke with them just minutes ago. He is in good spirits, and he looks forward to rejoin with his MP colleagues. Members, before you are copies of a Commonwealth Day message from Buckingham Palace and the Commonwealth Day affirmation, which I need not read. Also, a week ago, the President of the Senate attended a Taiwan Gender Equality Week 2023 in New York. And the seminar comprised of a fashion show which celebrated women in technology and a panel discussion presentation which highlighted the initiatives of Taiwan's NGOs. And members, the member for Viewfort South over the past weekend celebrated his wedding anniversary, and I ask that you join me in wishing him and his wife well. So that may explain why he looks so happy today. Any statements from ministers? No. Papers to be laid. Prime Minister and Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 26 of 2023, Excise Tax Amendment Schedule 1, number 4 order.
Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers standing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 24 of 2023, Tourism Incentives, the Himaya Moore Order.
Minister for Commerce and Manufacturing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper appearing in my name. Statutory Instrument number 25 of 2023, Price Control Amendment number 4 order.
Motions. Prime Minister, Minister for Finance.
Whereas it is provided under Section 63(1)(a) of the Public Finance Management Act that the Minister of Finance may, by affirmative resolution of Parliament, borrow from a bank or other financial institution for the capital or current expenditure of government. And whereas it is further provided under Section 64 of the Act that money borrowed by the government must be paid into and form part of the consolidated fund. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to borrow US $9.867 million from the ordinary capital reserves of the Caribbean Development Bank, allocated from the European Investment Bank's second action line of credit component resources, the loan for the implementation of the Building Public Health Resilience Coronavirus Disease 2019 Response Project, and whereas the loan is repayable in 76 equal or approximately equal installments, commencing 3 years after the date of the loan agreement, and whereas interest at the variable rate of 4% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount of the principal disbursed and outstanding from time to time, and whereas a commitment fee at a rate of 1% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount on disbursed from time to time, commencing from the 16th day after the date of the loan agreement, be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to borrow US $9.867 million from the ordinary capital resources of the Caribbean Development Bank, allocated from the European Investment Bank's second climate action line of credit, component resources, the loan, for the implementation of the Building Public Health Resilience Coronavirus Disease 2019 Response Project. Be it further resolved that the loan is repayable in 76 equal or approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments commencing 3 years after the date of the loan agreement, interest at a variable rate of 4%. Interest at a variable rate of 4.06% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount of the principal disbursed and outstanding from time to time. A commitment fee at a rate of 1% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount undisbursed from the time commencing from the 16th day after date of loan agreement. Mr. Speaker, as we are well aware, the coronavirus or COVID has not escaped us, continues. We continue to have issues, albeit not at the scale that we had before, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this loan basically is, we are borrowing $9.8 million, Mr. Speaker, basically to respond to this crisis, Mr. Speaker. Responding to this crisis means that we have to ensure that, first of all, we control it. That means avoiding further infections, and secondly, building our resilience so that this pandemic and any other pandemics, when they come, and it's a matter of when, Mr. Speaker, according to what the medical experts say, is according to when they come, we are prepared for it, and hopefully the death and destruction of COVID, Mr. Speaker, may not follow with any other infections, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as at February 28th, there have been 30,000 diagnosed cases of COVID and 409 deaths. As that, Mr. Speaker, 409 deaths and 409 deaths, and at the same time, Mr. Speaker, is only 1.4%. The fatality rate is 1.4%, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the pandemic has impacted on the capacity of the health center to respond to the health threats and to continue giving an adequate level of health delivery services. So this law, Mr. Speaker, is going to strengthen the services available to the people of St. Lucia at three main levels: goods and services, infrastructure works, and project management. Mr. Speaker, I will deal briefly with these three components, and the Minister of Health will go into greater detail. Mr. Speaker, component number one, provision of goods and services. That is aimed at disrupting the chain of transmission of the coronavirus. It means, Mr. Speaker, that we'll provide resources to help to halt or to reverse the spread of COVID-19 and other emerging and re-emerging illnesses. The focus, Mr. Speaker, is on risk communication. The other part of that component, Mr. Speaker, is the strengthening risk communication and the vaccine campaigns. Mr. Speaker, you know, there is great hesitancy still among people to take the COVID-19 vaccination, Mr. Speaker. So this component is to help communicate with the public as to why they should make, why the vaccine, when it's available, that they should take it, Mr. Speaker. Because regardless of what we are hearing, it seems, according to a large part of the science, that the vaccines are the most appropriate way to halt the spread of infections, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other part of that component is strengthening service delivery for care of COVID-19, people who get COVID-19, Mr. Speaker. And that component will support the procurement of medical and non-medical equipment and supplies, the procurement of medication, to improve the management care of patients, and to improve the health system capacity to support survivors and to expand the capacity for the continuity of essential care. Mr. Speaker, the other component is medical and non-medical equipment and general supplies. And this means, Mr. Speaker, that the loan will provide for medical equipment such as ventilators, X-ray machines, ultrasound machines, etc. And also, equipment will be procured for the Larry Seuss Wellness Center, Mr. Speaker. And part of that, as I'm on the Larry Seuss Wellness Center, I want to announce, Mr. Speaker, that part of this loan will be used to rebuild the burnt-out Larry Seuss Resource Center. Mr. Speaker, so we get equipment for the Larry Seuss Wellness Center, the Castries Urban Polyclinic, and again, I'm sure the minister will expand on that. Part of this loan will be used to move the old health center to a modern urban wellness center, which will be located at the present Victoria Hospital location. The minister, I'm sure, will expand further on that, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the loan also will be used to purchase medicines, and will also be used to help in the purchase of medication for people who are suffering from non-communicable diseases like hypertension and diabetes, Mr. Speaker. This loan, Mr. Speaker, will also be used for infrastructure works. Infrastructure works that would strengthen the service delivery to the people of St. Lucia. And I spoke about the re-establishment of the Larry Seuss Wellness Center, the reconfiguration of wards at the Comfort Bay Home, the refurbishment of a burnt-out section and roof repairs for the Soufrière Hospital, the establishment of the Castries Urban Polyclinic, which, as I said, is the relocation and expansion of the Castries Urban Center, which will then be named the Castries Urban Polyclinic, and the construction of an annex at the Dennery Hospital. Then that annex will house urgent care, a doctor's office, a pharmacy, and some beds for observation. So, Mr. Speaker, this loan is going to have significant impact on health service delivery in St. Lucia. And not only in St. Lucia, not only in Castries, but in Dennery and Larry Seuss and other parts of the country. I mean, Mr. Speaker, that is based on the government's emphasis on this year on national security and health. You will know that in our budget this year, Mr. Speaker, there will be a strong influence of national security and health, and also emphasis would be on the delivery of health care. In a further motion, as the day goes on, you will see we are going to be making it easier for the OKEU to run their operations, Mr. Speaker, by paying an old debt and giving new money so that they can improve the situation of the OKEU. So, Mr. Speaker, in terms of health and national security, the public of St. Lucia can look forward to many things happening in these two sectors. Many things happen in these two sectors, Mr. Speaker, and we are sure that the benefits of the expenditure on health and national security will redound to the benefit of the people of St. Lucia as we continue for our mantra of putting the people of St. Lucia first. So this year, the coming fiscal year, the emphasis is going to be on health, as is clear. Last session of Parliament, we borrowed money for health. This session, we continue to borrow money for health. And as we improve the health facilities, we will see that the government's emphasis on health care, we are putting our money where our mouth is, to improve the quality of health for the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. So I urge members to support the motion as we look to put people first and have a healthier St. Lucia for the benefit of all. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow US $9.867 million from the ordinary capital resources of the Caribbean Development Bank allocated from the European Investment Bank's second climate action line of credit component resources, the loan, for the implementation of the Building Public Health Resilience Coronavirus Disease 2019 Response Project. Be it further resolved that A, the loan is repayable in 76 equal or approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments commencing 3 years after the date of the loan agreement. B, interest at the variable rate of 4.06% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount of the principal disbursed and outstanding from time to time. And C, a commitment fee at the rate of 1% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount undisbursed from time to time, commencing from the 60th day after the date of the loan agreement. The member for Vieux-Fort North.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon to you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable members. I rise, Mr. Speaker, to support the motion which was presented by the Prime Minister. I wish, Mr. Speaker, to ask you to give me just a few seconds to join the government of St. Lucia, but in particular, to join the people of Vieux-Fort South and Vieux-Fort in general, and also the Member of Parliament for Vieux-Fort South, not only in prayers, but in actions that every single one of us can take, whether it be at the level of our families, our friends, and everyone, to address and to arrest the violent crime in the community, especially over the last few days. It is very sad, Mr. Speaker, and as Minister for Health, Wellness and Elderly Affairs, I dare say that it is a very critical issue for us in the health sector, as this matter impacts the delivery of healthcare services and also the emotional stress which is experienced by the healthcare workers. So I wish to state, Mr. Speaker, that I'm in solidarity with the people of the South, and also in solidarity with all those who are doing their very best, including law enforcement, to ensure that we arrest this situation. Mr. Speaker, this motion speaks to building health system resilience and the coronavirus disease 2019 response. We continue as a government to respond to COVID-19, not only to respond to the disease itself, but also to build resilience and to develop systems which will assist us when we have another threat. This project, Mr. Speaker, aims to build health system resilience in an effort to address health security threats while continuing to deliver quality essential health services. While the country directed a lot of resources to address the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, it was more reactive than proactive. And this is true not only for St. Lucia, but for many countries in the Caribbean and indeed the world. It is very important, Mr. Speaker, that we remain focused and we do not let our guard go, so to speak. We do not drop our guard. There are many risks still, and there are enduring gaps in core services and in our capacity to prevent, to prepare for, and to respond to emerging health emergencies. Même si an chay moun kwe, Mr. Speaker, COVID zafini, COVID poko fini, parce que si nous n'y a lot twakasman ko COVID encore, nous poko fin pa we. Nous en fait yon de bagay ki bon, mais nous poko fin pa we, avec l'argent ça là kay aide nous pa we système nous, ek aide nous gen we made ek divers bay comme ça. It is also important, Mr. Speaker, to provide support not only to address health risks, but also to bolster an already fragile primary community health system and to provide social safety nets for the vulnerable population. The strengthening of primary and community health is a key component of building a resilient health system. Mr. Speaker, let me just speak to a few of the activities. The Member of Parliament for Castries East and Prime Minister, the presenter of the motion, did speak to some of them. First of all, we need to strengthen risk communication, which will include procurement of equipment, televisions and so on, which will be installed at community wellness centers throughout St. Lucia to engage the community in the promotion of health promotion activities and also vaccination campaigns. Prime Minister said it, Mr. Speaker, we continue to battle against conspiracy theories in the media about vaccination, and it is a very big challenge. Again, in the medical literature, Mr. Speaker, it is very clear that vaccination is a very important safeguard against not only the COVID-19 serious illness arising out of COVID-19 infections, but other infections, other illnesses also. It's a challenge, Mr. Speaker, but we'll continue to push the message. The procurement of medical and non-medical equipment, and the Prime Minister spoke about the Castries Urban Polyclinic, the Comfort Bay Senior Citizens Home, the Lauritius Wellness Center, Central Procurement Grosile Polyclinic, the St. Jude Hospital, the Soufrière Hospital, the Viewfort Wellness Center. So we are going to procure new equipment and so on for all of these centers. The procurement of pharmaceuticals, especially for non-communicable diseases like diabetes and hypertension. This is very critical, and I've spoken about this before. We have all spoken about it. We know the problems relating to non-communicable diseases. I wish at this time, Mr. Speaker, to thank all members of Parliament who have participated so far in the St. Lucia Moves campaign. I see members of Parliament doing very well, Mr. Speaker. And the star, so far, the star is the Member of Parliament for Soufrière. So we are looking forward to the other members of Parliament participating. But it is going very well. We see businesses and others. We hope it will permeate throughout the communities, because this is really encouragement. What we really want to see is the clubs and families and so on getting up, walking, and that it becomes something natural, that we do not need a promotional campaign to get it going. That's what we are hoping. It's also important because we are going to have payments for contracting in private hospital facilities for persons who may be referred from public hospitals and from the public health sector. We have a number of individuals, Mr. Speaker, who are referred to the private facilities. There are a number of them, and we will use some of this money to pay for these services. It is very important for us to procure a bus for use at the Soufrière Hospital to assist with the distribution of supplies and pharmaceuticals to the West Coast, to the wellness centers and so on the West Coast. So we will purchase a bus for that purpose. Biomedical test equipment Very important. We have established, as I've said before, a biomedical unit at the respiratory hospital, and this unit is responsible for, it's a rapid response unit which goes to all 36 wellness centers, to the hospitals, to assist them with the maintenance of biomedical equipment. Very important. We're also going to procure information technology equipment and security cameras. Security cameras for all 36 wellness centers and the central procurement warehouse. Security is becoming extremely important, Mr. Speaker, as you can well imagine, and many of our wellness centers do not have security cameras. We are going to procure security cameras and revamp the whole security apparatus, whether it be at the St. Jude Hospital or at our wellness centers. This is very, very critical to safeguard our patients and our staff. Building the capacity of maintenance at the Owen King EU Hospital in order to maintain the medical gas system through the provision of training and certification of technicians and the purchase of parts for use in training and certification. We are going to reconfigure some space in the Health Information and Education Unit to build capacity of the Ministry of Health with regards to communication. Strengthening of service delivery through the reconstruction of the La Rochus Wellness Center. The Prime Minister already spoke to this, and this is a very important goal for us this year. We really want to deliver the La Rochus Wellness Center. It's a long time coming, and the Minister of the Minister for Education is always at my neck for the La Rochus Wellness Center. We are hoping to deliver this year. The Comfort Bay Senior Citizens Home. Speaker, the Comfort Bay Senior Citizens Home it requires attention, it requires reorganization, and we are working because there are so many requests, there are a number of critical requests, especially of late for individuals who need to be referred to the Comfort Bay Senior Citizens Home, and there are some deficiencies there. We are working speedily to address those deficiencies so that we can take in the most critical cases. The establishment of the Castries Urban Polyclinic. This again is a work in progress. Since 2013, there's a cabinet conclusion. Since 2013, which speaks to the establishment of the Castries Urban Polyclinic. We've not been able to do it. But right now we are in discussions with the union. Last week we met with the unions. We're in discussions with the staff. In fact, I believe as we speak, there's a meeting at the respiratory hospital with the staff. We've had several meetings. We have had assessments of the Castries Health Center, the building. We've had structural integrity assessments and all of that, and we are definitely moving forward with the transfer of services from the Castries Health Center to Victoria Hospital, so to speak. And this area will also be serviced by the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. So we are moving forward with this, and the communication with the public will start very soon. I want to say, however, Mr. Speaker, we cannot continue to operate at the Castries Wellness Center. Just the buildings, and I will come to Parliament with the structural integrity reports and so on, the environmental assessments and so on. We have done all of these assessments to ensure that we're on solid ground when we approach the public and the Parliament with our move. But we must relocate the Castries Wellness Center. It is not providing the best services in the conditions of the building and so on. We must do what we have to do, and we are working towards this goal. So this loan will assist us, and the Prime Minister spoke to the Dennery Hospital and so forth. It will also provide for project management costs, which will include a project coordinator, procurement officer, procurement specialist, design and supervision consultancy, and other project auditing costs and project management costs. Mr. Speaker, l'argent ça là, kay fait un chay bagay, ma kay di toutes ces bagay là, mais important pour me dire adam. Nous kay gagner équipement pour l'hôpital St. Jude, l'hôpital Soufouye, Health Center Vieux-Fort, Grosile Polyclinic, Eglanian Chai, we made différents équipements qui sont allés à toutes ces health centers en cette lycée. Nous avons un problème avec sécurité. Avec ces health centers, nous, ces nurses là, avec ces docteurs qui ont toujours dit nous, les mois qui passé, nous avons un problème de sécurité. Quand ça nous a gagné, ça nous a créé à Paris des photos, ou bien en anglais, security cameras, pour assurer que nous conserver manière moun ka travail avec si la des pièces difficulté nous ni un monde qui ça garder ces caméras avec pour faire docteur avec nurse avec health aid avec janitor tout le monde sentir un plus manière sécurité pour les ka travail. Aussi, Mr. Speaker, nous allons aller à Owen King EU Hospital, l'hôpital là, Owen King avec à la Millennium Highway avec nous allons assister à medical gas. Ça veut dire là où beaucoup chou, si vous avez joindre ces medical gas là même nous allons aider à ranger ça. Nous allons faire travail à Laurentius Wellness Center, nous allons via Wibati à Health Center à Laurentius à Denry North et avec aussi nous allons faire travail Comfort Bay. Parce que nous avons chaque grand monde qui besoin aller Comfort Bay, nous avons une chaque application avec manière Comfort Bay à besoin là ni travail nous pour faire là. Grossile Polyclinique comme je dit avec il est important pour moi dire Health Center Castries Health Center. Là nous avons chaque difficulté avec building là, nous avons chaque problème là, nous avons gardé avec manière nous avons opéré à Castries Health Center. Nous avons changé ça avec faire toute opération nous à Victoria Hospital. Nous avons créé Castries Urban Polyclinic. Avec nous avons fait toute consultation, nous avons dit tout je pays avec le Parlement pour qui ça nous avons fait ça parce que c'est difficile pour opérer là et là il y a une difficulté avec building avec bagaille comme ça. Comme ça nous là nous avons commencé, nous avons des meetings avec ces travailleurs à Victoria Hospital, nous avons des meetings avec Union. Et ça très important, nous avons des meetings avec Union qui a représenté ces travailleurs Victoria Hospital et nous allons continuer nous pour ni meeting avec ces docteurs, ces nurses là pour nous parler aller. So, Mr. Speaker, je vais supporter l'ONU là avec le Premier ministre l'a dit, nous allons continuer à mettre santé plus important parce que ça fait santé en cette liste, nous avons chaque travail pour faire toujours pour manger, mais nous allons mettre chaque l'argent en santé avec Premier ministre qui a parlé plus en la santé tout à l'heure, avec un budget, Premier ministre qui a dit en chaque plus en la santé. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Denry North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, mine will be a very, very brief contribution to the debate on the resolution that is before the House this morning. And the Prime Minister called it right, Mr. Speaker, as an aside, when he said that once I heard Larissus, he knew I would rise to my feet. What he did not say to me off the record was that I would stand in support of the resolution as I've done for every other resolution on which I've spoken since we assumed office. Mr. Speaker, mine has always been a posture of objectivity, and once a resolution is brought to the House and I can see merit in it for our country and more specifically the people of Denry North, you can rest assured that that resolution will receive the support of the member from Denry North who comes here not on his own volition but on that of the thousands of people who after free elections continue to repose their confidence in me. Mr. Speaker, I would crave your indulgence to profit the opportunity to express get well wishes to my parliamentary colleague, Minister for Equity, who is currently off island receiving medical treatment. Mr. Speaker, and you accurately reported this morning that he is in very high spirits. He is recovering nicely, and it won't be much longer before he graces us with his presence in the House. And so I want to profit the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to wish him well as he continues on that journey of recovery. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the resolution to borrow monies to improve and strengthen our health system. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we understand the importance of healthcare to the people of this country. And we have espoused over time, Mr. Speaker, consistently that development does not always have to manifest itself in the form of concrete and steel, but that a very delicate balance has to be struck between, Mr. Speaker, infrastructure and the provision of social services, particularly for persons who, because of their circumstances in life, may not be able to provide for themselves. And that has been at the heart of our programming, and it was not by accident on the campaign trail resorted to the mantra of putting people first. Mr. Speaker, this morning the people of St. Lucia are being put first again. And I can stand here a proud parliamentary representative and tell you that the people of the Mabuya Valley, based on the pronouncements made by the Prime Minister and echoed by the Minister of Health, are being put first. Mr. Speaker, at the heart of the resolution before us, among other things, is the reinstatement of the Larissos Health Center in Denry North. Mr. Speaker, a few years ago, the Larissos Health Center was destroyed by fire. I was the incumbent parliamentary representative at the time, and I also happened to be a minister in the cabinet at the time of the fire. And I recall, Mr. Speaker, shortly thereafter we went into a budget cycle, and to his credit, the then Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, member for Vieux-Fort South, did have in the estimates, Mr. Speaker, of 2016, a line item. It wasn't a case where he had a lump sum for healthcare and that the professionals and the administrators in the Ministry of Health would have decided how to expend those monies. But instead, Mr. Speaker, the Larissos Health Center reinstatement project was a line item in the estimates of 2016. And so, notwithstanding the fact that the government changed in 2016, Mr. Speaker, and I had retained my seat, I was confident that because that amount had already been allocated for the reinstatement of Larissos, that the facility would have been repaired. Mr. Speaker, I was extremely disappointed when the administration of the day, the incoming administration, saw the need, Mr. Speaker, to totally remove that particular allocation, which was grant funding, ROCT, Republic of China, Taiwan, an amount in the estimates. Mr. Speaker, they did not have to engage the Caribbean Development Bank or the World Bank or any lending institution for that matter. It was grant monies that we were receiving from the government and people of Taiwan for the reinstatement of that hospital. And Mr. Speaker, consistent with a strategy to starve opposition parliamentarians at the time of resources and to derail programs that would have benefited the average man, Mr. Speaker, I had to sit by and watch vines and other bushes take over the Larissos Health Center facility. But Mr. Speaker, I stayed the course. Mr. Speaker, I continue to dialogue with my people. And Mr. Speaker, that is why today, those who were able to huff and puff in this chamber whilst I sat on the cold opposition benches deprived of resources, Mr. Speaker, while some of them are not here today, I can stand here in support of a resolution that will once and for all see the reinstatement of the Larissos Health Center. And I must place on the record not just my own personal gratitude, but the collective gratitude of the thousands of people in the Mabuya Valley who would look in the direction of the Larissos Health Center or Wellness Facility, Mr. Speaker, for care on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, it is not enough to just reconstruct the building and to bolster the infrastructure, but equally important in 2023 would be the procurement of modern equipment that would ensure that the services dispensed at a wellness center, Mr. Speaker, at Larissos will not be substandard compared to what is being dispensed and what is being provided in other parts of this country. And so this morning, Mr. Speaker, I am extremely grateful and that I can go to my people and tell them that the promises that we made in relation to the reinstatement of that health center, Mr. Speaker. Promise made, promise kept. And Mr. Speaker, I'm sure it is not just the constituents of Denry North who welcome news of resources being mobilized for the reinstatement of that facility, but I know the healthcare professionals too, Mr. Speaker, would be extremely relieved, because as we speak, Mr. Speaker, the Richford Health Center, which normally would have had a catchment area of Grand Riviere, Richford, and some from Grand Ravine, today, Mr. Speaker, for several years now, has to deal with the entire Mabuya Valley population, where you have persons from Oleon, Denny Riviere, Gadet, Larissus, Despin, Grand Riviere, Richford, Gravin, Tilachus, Lapel, and all those communities descending on the Richford Wellness Facility. And Mr. Speaker, we know that consistent with best practice in healthcare delivery, a doctor should not be seen some of the numbers we see congregating on days when people come in search of care. And so, Mr. Speaker, the burden that the Richford facility has been carrying and bearing for so many years will be relieved of that particular strain, and that services will be available to the people of Gadet, Denny Riviere, Olio in particular, at the Larissus Wellness Center. And so, Mr. Speaker, I support the resolution, but it would be remiss of me, Mr. Speaker, to speak on this without resorting to the Creole language pour dire qui quand est content, moi content aujourd'hui that nous avons venu devant le Parlement pour le gouvernement qui a prêté l'argent, pas l'argent pour juste gaspiller les bails qui pas nécessaire, mais l'argent qui a bail moun santé, Mr. Speaker, bagay qui a bail moun en système santé qui est plus formidable. Et moi très content aujourd'hui parmi toutes ces bagailles là, Premier ministre là et puis ministre santé parler about qui ça l'argent qu'il fait that nous kay la Resource Health Center constituency moi kay tapé bâti encore avec Jean en constituency moi Denry North et puis Mabuya Valley kay ça aller la ressource pour ouais docteur pour check pressure yo moun qui go boudin ça ouais docteur et puis bagaille comme ça. Mr. Speaker, Health Center t'es tapé brûlé yon de l'année qui passée en 2016, Premier ministre en temps, et puis même Parlement pour Vieux-Fort Sud, l'équité ministre Finance, il te mettait l'argent en budget là, Mr. Speaker, en 2016 pour voir qui ça a été tapé bâti encore. Mais comme ça, la tenue élection, les partis perdent l'élection et puis un gouvernement neuf en tout. Et que le gouvernement neuf là en tout, Mr. Speaker, moi still tenir espoir. That piece l'argent te hala, encore nous avons dit en anglais, the money had already been allocated, that nous avons where health center nous vie. But Mr. Speaker, nous tout ça qui fait pour 5 années à nous être en opposition, constituant si nous pas de cas joindre avec nous-mêmes comme membre parlement, pas de cas joindre pièce qualité ressources éléments nous pour faire bagaille en constituant si nous. But Mr. Speaker, mon parti décomporté, et c'est pour raison ça aujourd'hui, plusieurs années après ça, moi ça tout bout ici et puis si porter en plan gouvernement pour joindre l'argent pour mener health center ça à vie. C'est pas seulement mon constituency moyen qui est content développement ça, mais moi savent c'est docteurs, c'est nurses là et puis ça en anglais nous avons créé healthcare providers, yo kay bienvenue qualité nouvelle ça là because you too Mr. Speaker can ni pour dire et puis en chaque pli moun passer yo supposé ka ouais dans journée les yo ka by remède et yo ka try point que moun a constituency et c'est pour raison ça Mr. Speaker moi ka supporter résolution ça là and I want to place on the record that this is money, Mr. Speaker, that will be well spent, and all of us in Denry North welcome this development, and we have to, Mr. Speaker, spare a thought not only for the Prime Minister, but also the Minister responsible for health, for the dedication and the passion that he brings to that portfolio. Mr. Speaker, we remember healthcare administration in this country from a ministerial standpoint not too long ago. And at times you're not even clear in terms of who was really calling the shots in the healthcare sector. There was a minister responsible for healthcare infrastructure. there was a minister responsible for healthcare medication, and there was another minister, Mr. Speaker, who presided over everything, and the ones who went negotiating contracts for healthcare were not the ones executing those contracts. So it was a melange, Mr. Speaker. But today, we have streamlined those processes, both in terms of administration and healthcare delivery, Mr. Speaker. And that is why I believe, and I'm very optimistic, that we will see a tremendous improvement across subsectors of the health sector in this country. The Prime Minister is on the record, even ahead of his formal budget statement, to tell the nation at times, and he has given snippets, that the ensuing budget will be one that is premised or focused, Mr. Speaker, heavily on national security and healthcare. And I'm extremely confident that as those plans continue to unfold, both at the national and community levels, a lot of us as representatives of the people will be extremely happy, because we know that there are better days on the horizon for the citizenry of this country as far as healthcare is concerned. The money is not being borrowed to facilitate facilities for horses. The money is not being borrowed, Mr. Speaker, to prepare any racetrack, but this is money that is meant to touch people in areas or aspects of their lives where it matters, particularly those persons, Mr. Speaker, who do not have insurance and who constantly come to our parliamentary offices looking for help, looking for a handout, because they have serious health issues, but their circumstances in life do not enable them to have the resources to go and take care of themselves. And when we put programs in place, as a result of the borrowing that you see here this morning, Mr. Speaker, we can sit back and feel vindicated, because, as I would have said in my preamble, we are giving expression to a mantra that we embraced on the campaign trail. We are putting people first. So, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of my constituents of Dennery North, I stand in solidarity with the Prime Minister, and I unequivocally support the resolution that is before the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister, the member for Swazel will place his light on first. Member for Swazel Saltibus.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, colleagues. Mr. Speaker, I rise to make a short contribution to the motion in front of us. But I would like to begin by repeating the Prime Minister's line which he used, and he said that the coronavirus is still with us, and we still have issues, but not necessarily at the scale that we had before. And I'm very happy that that recognition is apparent, that while we are almost 3 years from after the coronavirus hit us, that we are still borrowing to address matters related to the coronavirus. You will remember, Mr. Speaker, that the last administration was heavily berated. In fact, they coined Tuesday as a Mardi Puite because of what was at the time thought that we were borrowing heavily. And in fact, the leader of the opposition at the time, now the Prime Minister, I remember him indicating that he might have a lot of difficulty in obtaining loans, considering the amount of borrowing that was happening. But it appears to me, Mr. Speaker, he has quite a bit of ease in obtaining financing, considering the number of times we've been here so far to borrow, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I will not chastise the borrowing, because I have said, I'm on record for saying that governments have to borrow for the operation of government to continue, Mr. Speaker. So I'm not here to chastise. I support any borrowing that government will do, as long as it's to benefit the people of the country, Mr. Speaker. But I want the Minister of Health, the member for Beaufort North, and the Prime Minister to take note that, and the Prime Minister made mention that he believes the Choiseul Solibus constituency has the most health centers. I think his words were per capita the last time you mentioned that Choiseul has the most, which is quite true. We're not just most health centers, we have the most schools, the most fields, the most community centers, the most centenarians, the most river crossings, quite a bit in our community, Mr. Speaker. And by virtue of that large space that we have, and that large public facility, Mr. Speaker, one of the challenges especially the senior citizens have when they come to particularly the Lafag Wellness Center, is that they're very early because they have to rise early to get bus, Mr. Speaker. And as a result of that, many times they have to stand out there waiting for the facility to open, and they have to deal with the elements, and sometimes they have to run for shelter across the road by good citizens, Mr. Speaker, who would open up their balconies and their houses for them, Mr. Speaker. And I did have a drawing that was done by an architect from the Physical Planning Department, Mr. Speaker, to provide a sort of a shelter so that the people would have seating accommodation while they wait, Mr. Speaker. And I'm hoping as we go forward, this is considered in, because it was not very expensive, Mr. Speaker. I think it was just under $25,000 to construct that with seating, Mr. Speaker, that can be considered. And as the member for Beaufort North also mentioned, security is an issue, and the fencing, Mr. Speaker, has dropped, and that also poses a security risk. And I'm also that would be taken into consideration, Mr. Speaker. But obviously, this is for the benefit of the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, and as I have said before, Mr. Speaker, I will continuously support anything, Mr. Speaker, that benefits our people. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Member for Cashews East. No, proceed ahead.
Mr. Speaker, you will notice that between the last two sittings, we've borrowed about $15 million US for healthcare. Mr. Speaker, it's very important that we do that. It's very important that we do that because the health has been an area in St. Lucia's development that we have to pay greater emphasis on it, Mr. Speaker. And it just shows how this government is constructing proper health care for the people of St. Lucia. Number one, we are borrowing these funds to improve general health delivery, Mr. Speaker, to improve communication, to have procurement of medical and non-medical equipment, procurement of pharmaceuticals, to pay contracting private hospitals, because a lot of sometimes we cannot get the treatment at the local hospital, so we have to go to private hospitals. We are getting money to pay them, Mr. Speaker. We are getting money for the procurement of biomedical test equipment, the procurement of information technology equipment, the building capacity at the OKU hospital, the reconfiguration of the space at the health and education unit, Mr. Speaker, the strengthening of service delivery, the improvement of the wellness center, the rebuilding of the Lucia Center, Mr. Speaker. So that is at the level of the community, and the minister speaks about centers of excellence. We open the Ancillary Wellness Center. At the level of the community, we are building that capacity. Then at the level of the OKU hospital, in a while we're going to be borrowing nearly $23 million for injection in the OKU hospital, albeit $11 million of that is not our making, but we have to meet the commitments of a former government. So we are doing that, Mr. Speaker. And we are working on the St. Jude Hospital to ensure that St. Jude Hospitals is open at the earliest possible opportunity. So, Mr. Speaker, you can see how the program is developing as far as healthcare is concerned. It's a plan that and whilst we're doing that, we are working on universal healthcare. And I heard a member of the opposition say, what is universal healthcare? But, Mr. Speaker, what is... Not you never said so. Universal health care, Mr. Speaker, is a provision of affordable health for affordable and accessible health for the majority of people in the country. Affordable and accessible. These are the key words, Mr. Speaker. So we are working on that. And unlike these hairy-fairy things that never have any documents, we, the Minister of Health, there is a clear and concise plan, a document that the stages which we will attain that goal of universal, of affordable and accessible health for all the people of the nation, Mr. Speaker. So now it's a matter of implementation. The legal situation, we have to get a resolution. Now it's implementation. And I urge the technocrats in the Ministry of Health and the other ministries, the Ministry of Economic Development, to deal with the implementation at a rapid rate. It's very important because we can come here and we've done all the work, we've done all the legal requirements, the Attorney General Office has done it, but the implementation, and I've been in discussions with the Caribbean Development Bank on hastening the process at which these loans are disbursed, and they are in agreement with us. And this week on Thursday we're going to be actually operationalizing a loan for small business. So I hope that we can get the money in the country at the earliest possible opportunity. Because if the money doesn't get to the country at the earliest possible opportunity, Mr. Speaker, we will end up just looking as if we are just talking. So I urge the technocrats, let's get down to work from today. We have done our part so we can get the money in the country so the people of the country can benefit from these borrowings. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow US $9.867 million from the ordinary capital resources of the Caribbean Development Bank, allocated from the European Investment Bank Second Climate Action Line of Credit Component Resources, the loan, for the implementation of the Building Public Health Resilience Coronavirus Disease 2019 Response Project. Be it further resolved that A, the loan is repayable in 76 equal or approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments commencing 3 years after the date of the loan agreement. B, interest at the variable rate of 4.06% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount of the principal disbursed and outstanding from time to time. And C, a commitment fee at the rate of 1% per annum is payable quarterly on the amount undisbursed from time to time, commencing from the 60th day after the date of the loan agreement. I now put the question. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as have a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Prime Minister, Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay the following. Whereas is provided under Section 65(1) of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 15.0.1, the Act, that the Minister of Finance may, by an affirmative resolution of Parliament, grant a guarantee in accordance with an enactment. And whereas is further provided under Section 69(2) of the Act, that a guarantee issued by the government or contingent liability created by the government in accordance with the regulations under the Act and in accordance with another enactment shall be charged on and paid out of the consolidated fund. And whereas is provided under Section 41 of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex Act, Cap 11.07, that with the approval of Parliament signified by a resolution, the Minister of Finance may guarantee and any approved borrowing by the medical complex. And whereas it is further provided under Section 42 of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex Act Cap 11.07 that a borrowing guaranteed shall, in default of payment by the medical complex, be charged on the consolidated fund. And whereas the Minister of Finance considers it necessary to guarantee a loan of credit from the First National Bank, St. Lucia Limited, the bank, to the Millennium Heights Medical Complex in the amount of EC 23.05 million, consisting of an overdraft limit of EC 6.5 million to assist with working capital requirements, a loan of 5 million to assist with operational expenses for the purchase of new equipment, etc., a loan of 11.4 million to satisfy a debt of the Ministry of Finance, a corporate credit card with a limit of 1.5 million to assist with monthly expenses, 150,000 to assist with monthly expenses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And whereas for the overdraft limit of 6.5 million, the terms of the overdraft is for 12 months, interest is payable at 6% per annum, subject to a change in line with the general level of interest rates in excess rate of 17%. And whereas for the loan of EC 5 million, the term of the loan is for 180 months, repayment of $46,985 monthly, with effect from 1 month after drawdown, with the last payment plus any outstanding principal and interest due 180 months after full drawdown. Interest is payable at a rate of 4% per annum, subject to a change in line with the general level of fluctuating rates. And whereas for the loan of 11.4 million, the term of the loan is 180 months. Repayment is for $84,324 monthly, with effect from 1 month after drawdown, with the last payment plus any outstanding principal and interest due 180 months after full drawdown. Interest is payable at a rate of 4% per annum. Some water, please. Subject to a change in line with the general level of fluctuating rates. And whereas for the corporate credit card, with a limit of 150,000, repayment is monthly. Interest is payable in accordance with visa terms and conditions. Be it resolved that the Parliament authorizes the Minister of Finance to guarantee a line of credit from the First National Bank, St. Lucia Limited, the bank, to the Millennium Heights Medical Complex in the amount of 23.05 million, consisting of an overdraft limit of 6.5 million to assist with working capital requirements, a loan of 5 million to assist with operational expenses for the purchase of new equipment, a loan of 11.4 million to satisfy a debt of the Ministry of Finance, and a corporate credit card with a limit of $150,000 to assist with monthly expenses. For the overdraft limits, be it further resolved that for the overdraft limit of EC 6.5 million, the term of the overdraft is for 12 months. Interest is payable at 6% per annum, subject to a change in line with the general level of interest rates, excess rate of 17%. For the loan of 5 million, the term of the loan is for 180 months. Repayment is $36,985 monthly, with effect from 1 month after drawdown, the last payment plus any outstanding principal and interest due 180 months after full drawdown. Interest is payable at the rate of 4% per annum, subject to a change in line with the general level of fluctuating rates. For the loan of EC 11.4 million, the term of the loan is for 180 months. Repayment is for $84,324 monthly, with effect from 1 month after drawdown, with the last payment plus any outstanding principal and interest due 180 months after full drawdown. Interest is payable at a rate of 4%, subject to a change in line with the general level of fluctuating rates. For the corporate credit card, with a limit of EC $150,000, the repayment is monthly. Interest is payable in accordance with visa terms and conditions. Mr. Speaker, again, as I said previously, this is another loan for the health sector in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I will deal with the one that is a little more complex, for want of a better word, which is the loan of 11.4 million for the payment of a loan due to an organization called Cayman City. Or better known as Narayana Herudalaya Limited. Mr. Speaker, that organization was contracted by the last government, Mr. Speaker, and the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance tell me that they were not privy to these negotiations, as it was the same with negotiations for other lease agreements where the staff of the ministry, technocrats, Mr. Speaker, were not involved. And Mr. Speaker, it's something that our government and have always, we've agreed, Mr. Speaker, that the policy directorate gives the policy and allow the technocrats to work out the nitty-gritty. Because in the final analysis, you can disagree and you can instruct. That is what the people of the country put you in government for, to determine the policy and to request from the technocrats to work according to that policy. Policy is not the domain of technocrats. Technocrats advise. Policy is the domain of the political directorate. We've made that clear. So what in our government, what we do is that we give the policy directions and follow the dictates of the technocrats as it comes to implementing that policy and making that policy workable. Mr. Speaker, but that didn't happen all the time. There are at least, and I'm sure there are more, at least two cases where the political directorate was directly involved in dealing with contracts, in dealing with contracts with suppliers, contracts with service providers, contracts with contractors, and the civil service, as we know it, had absolutely no say. And that is another one, Mr. Speaker. The terms of that contract, the technocrats tell me they know nothing about it. But the story is that Cayman City was contracted by the government to help, and I'm sure the minister will give the exact terms, to help with the transition of the medical services from Victoria to the OKU hospital. But fortunately, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, that transition was done purely by St. Lucians. St. Lucians did it purely because when the United Workers' Party won the elections in 2016, they promptly dismissed the transition team that was set up by this government. The team was promptly dismissed, a team led by Dr. Stephen King. They were dismissed, summarily dismissed, for reasons best known to the then government. And these are facts. So that Cayman City a contract was given to them to help in that transition. Unfortunately, COVID came, and the same team that was dismissed, some members of that team were used to help in the transition from Victoria Hospital to the OKU. St. Lucians. Again, faith in the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Not having faith in the ability of St. Lucians is the same situation we are facing with the CCJ. We have no faith in our own. We suffer from so much self-hate that we don't believe in our own capability. We don't believe in our own ability to do things. So you find a transition team led by technocrats, you fire it. and you go into a contract with other people to do the same thing that the transition team could have done. So, Mr. Speaker, a contract was given to Cayman City, and the contract was for 2 years, and the contract amount was as follows. In the first year, $4.65 million US. In the second year, $4.65 million US. That payments were made to the Cayman City. I can't put, it is Nayariana. I'm not trying. So, NHL or NHL, Mr. Speaker. Payments have been made to NHL, Mr. Speaker. There have been payments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 payments, Mr. Speaker, made to them, and these payments were made between the 10th of July 2020 to December 2021. So it shows again, we paid some of it. We paid, meeting the commitments of the last government. We paid some of it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to tell you, are you aware that there were some contractors, because, at least one, because the last government believed that these contractors supported the St. Lucia Labour Party. You know, these contractors were not paid. They were not paid, Mr. Speaker, and caused them to put them in financial peril because it was believed that these people supported the St. Lucia Labour Party, and now we have to pay interest, a further drain on the resources of the country. We have to pay interest to these contractors. But, Mr. Speaker, even though, as I said, that contract was not incurred by us, even though the technocrats said that they knew nothing about it, we continued to pay, Mr. Speaker. But we have reached a point, Mr. Speaker, where the contract has expired. A report has come in, which the minister will expand on, Mr. Speaker, and we have to pay the balance of the contract, which, Mr. Speaker, is approximately $4.173 million. $4,173,648.28, which is $11,339,385. And that is why we are borrowing the money today. We are allowing the OKU, to borrow the money, and the government is guaranteeing it, Mr. Speaker. Because the good name of St. Lucia was under stress. Because it was a foreign company, a large foreign company, and the good name of our country was under tremendous stress because it was being said that we were not meeting our commitments and we were not paying our bills. So this government, wanting to maintain the integrity of St. Lucia's good name, wanting to maintain the integrity of St. Lucia as a client that we can do business with, we've decided to allow the Millennium Health Facility to borrow the money, and the government is guaranteeing it. So if there's any default in payment, the government will meet it, Mr. Speaker. So it just shows you the responsible manner in which we approach government. In that we are saying that even though there is a debt, which we really do not know very much about it, but we are going to pay it, Mr. Speaker, and hence the reason why we are borrowing, we are assisting the OKU hospital to borrow the money to pay back that amount to Cayman City, Mr. Speaker, approximately $11.4 million. Mr. Speaker, the rest of the remainder of the facility will be used as I said when I was reading the resolution. $5 million will be used as a loan for capital development and operational capital development in the hospital and for equipment, etc. And here's how it's going to be used, Mr. Speaker. We're going to insulation of the chilled water system. That is $1.084 million. The project involves the replacement of the insulation around the chilled water pipes. It has been assessed and confirmed that the replacement of the chillers and the new modular chillers at the OKU hospital is incomplete. Without the re-insulating of the chilled water pipes, the design of the exhaust system, and the installation of centralized system in order to control the heavy humidity, high temperatures, heavy water leaks due to condensation and poor ventilation at the complex. The condensation and mold growth has further deteriorated the insulation, which needs to be urgently replaced. The effect to the system over the past 3 years have led to serious issues for staff and patients. Disruption of services at the children's ward. It had to be closed for 3 months as the ward became inhabitable. Frequent mold and damage to many electrical and biomedical equipment. Recurring mold growth after an air quality assessment. This has led to costs of $15,000 per month for the past 3 months for deep cleaning in that part of the hospital, and poor ventilation and air exchanges for the hospital, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so it's necessary. We can't allow our people to be under these circumstances. It's necessary for us to borrow that money. And Mr. Speaker, there's been there's been an outbreak of mold in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, but let me just tell you a little story that I was told to by somebody who knows better. Who knows, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's the new government talking about mold and health. The new financial complex. There is a serious issue of mold in that financial complex. A building that was built, a modern building, recently built. And we're inquiring, why is that mold in that building, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, you know, that story, it shows you how this country was run. It shows how this country was run, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the movement to that new building was taking place, the technocrats in the Ministry of Finance, they employed or they contracted a suitable and qualified moving company. A company with the necessary trucks, the necessary equipment, the necessary knowledge to move the desks and the equipment from the old buildings to the new buildings. In doing that, an assessment was made. And the company warned them that some of that furniture should not go into the new building, and they should have at least the papers and documents and the files should be cleaned and before it went, and they should be transported in proper covered vehicles, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, for some strange reason, a minister of government that shall remain unnamed decided that the contract for the movement from these buildings to the new complex had to be done by somebody who was not trained, who was not qualified, who didn't have necessary moving equipment. That person, an instruction was given that that person must give him that contract. So the contract was given to that individual, Mr. Speaker. They transported the stuff in open trucks, and rain fell, and all the things got soaked And they took it and they brought it into that confined atmosphere environment in the new complex over there. Soaked papers, desks, and they put it in there, Mr. Speaker. And the rest is history. The rest is history. Now, in the coming estimates next week, you see we have to spend $1 million on these buildings because the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, who are renting the bottom floor, they have given notice that they are going to leave, that they are leaving because of the mold infestation. Staff in the ministry have to work at home, most of them. The Minister of Finance has an office there, he hasn't been in it. So the problem, Mr. Speaker, is because of one man who decided that he had to go against the dictates and the advice of the technocrats and do his own thing for first of all, for political retribution, because the company that was given the contract, that company was not politically correct to the minister. And secondly, he wanted to, as usual, victimize one to support the other. And when he gave it to the other person who was not qualified in that business, that caused the mayhem and the problems you have there today. And I'm sure the member of social doesn't know about it. Because I don't think he would deal with that kind of thing, because he knows how serious that situation is. So right now, the mole in that building, Mr. Speaker, the mold in that building, Mr. Speaker, is because of a poor practice. A practice of political retribution on one side and political victimization on the other side. And many situations in this country is due to the short-sightedness, Mr. Speaker, and the necessity for political retribution. So, Mr. Speaker, that is why we are where we are, and that's why we are where we are, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, $2 million of that $5 million will be used for the rehabilitation of the wards in the hospital. Many of the wards at the National Mental Wellness Center, the Turning Point Rehabilitation Center, and the complex are in dire need of repair and refurbishment. And Mr. Speaker, the National Wellness Center, it's very important that we are spending some money to make it, to improve the conditions there, Mr. Speaker. Because, Mr. Speaker, sometimes we forget about, when you talk about health, we don't speak about mental health. And it's very important that we deal with the mental health of the country, particularly after COVID, particularly after the stresses and the strains that are happening, Mr. Speaker. And talking about mental health, we've taken a decision that as soon as necessary, we are going to be working the member for Viewfort South. We're going to be seeing about some sort of counseling for the community of the areas that got affected by recent violence, and particularly the relatives of the people who got affected. We are going to be doing some counseling for institute, Mr. Speaker, to see about their mental health and their mental well-being, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are 6 inpatient wards that are in a dilapidated state, and they have been in existence for more than 12 years at the Wellness Center without any major upkeep, Mr. Speaker. So as a result, most of the building and the furniture have been seriously destroyed by external factors, Mr. Speaker, and we need to repair it. We need to repair the wards, and we need to replace some of that furniture, Mr. Speaker. The other part of the $864,000 of that $5 million is going to be used for upgrade of the sewer water treatment plant, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the wastewater treatment plant, it serves both the OKU Hospital and the National Mental Wellness Center and the Turning Point facility at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. The plant has been malfunctioning since 2017. Since 2017, Mr. Speaker, the sewer treatment at the OKU Hospital, at that facility, has been malfunctioning. And you talk about priorities, Mr. Speaker, and you speak about a government of priorities. Since 2017, in spite of partial repair and upgrade that was conducted in 2020, the membrane and the pumps, along with associated parts, continue to further deteriorate. The plant is now unable to process the waste water treatment, the sludge and wastewater, in a timely manner. The outcome of these defects leads to an overflow of the septic sludge into the environment, leaving a heavy foul stench on the Millennium Highway, and the depositing of septic water into the stream, thereby contaminating the water. Mr. Speaker, these are the conditions at the Millennium Hospital. Mr. Speaker, they are the conditions. Mr. Speaker, and we need to improve that, and you're using $864,000 from that $5 million loan to improve these conditions, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, $734,000 will be used to install a backup generator. That involves the commissioning of a new integrated 2000 kV generator into the current electrical system, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, whilst we are doing that, we also, as a backup, we also have to look into putting solar power in the hospital. We have to look at that, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure that will be worked upon very early in this year as we get the Electricity Supply Act, as we get the policy towards solar power, as we get it finalized this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're also going to use $203,000 of that money to upgrade the building maintenance system, the BMS. The building maintenance software controls the building automation and temperature control system by controlling and monitoring the following systems: air handling systems, central utility plants, including chillers, chill water pumps and boiler rooms, water system and dialysis plants, fire system and electrical main distribution center. The existing system currently performs partial monitoring and very limited control. It requires a high level of operator intervention for system monitoring and equipment interaction. The assessment concluded that the existing BMS infrastructure, sensors, wires and support systems are damaged, worn out and out of calibration, and require immediate upgrade. So we use some of that money to upgrade the system, Mr. Speaker. We're also going to use $144,000 of that money to repair and upgrade the fire alarm system. It was on commissioning of the OKU hospital, it was assessed that the fire alarm system was not fully functional and many of its components were faulty. Furthermore, the software program has since become obsolete and unable to connect with the fire alarm panel, thereby timing the functionality of the system, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this deficiency does not provide live access or monitoring of the alarm system, and as such, notification signals are compromised. This places the entire hospital operations at risk in the event of a fire, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the project summary is as follows: installation of a chilled water system, and I'll give you the exact figures, $1,084,670. Ward rehabilitation, $2,006,570. Upgrade of a sewer treatment plant, $864,000. Installation of a backup generator, $744,650. Upgrade to the building maintenance system, $203,310. Repair and upgrade to the fire alarm system, $144,000, coming to $5,047,200, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that is how the $5 million will be used, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow a gift from the European Union a gift that costs so many million, about $48 million, euros, to go to waste, Mr. Speaker. We can't allow it. And the government and the minister will expand on the work that we are doing on the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. But while we are doing that, we want to ensure that the quality of patient care improves, that the patients, and there have been some notable improvements in that facet of care at the hospital, Mr. Speaker, but it's a work in progress. So improving these physical conditions at the hospital, we hope that the quality of patient care given by the people who work there will improve, Mr. Speaker. And whilst I'm on my feet, I want to thank the people who work at the OKU. They've been having some challenges. I want to compliment the board for the work they are doing, but I'll say something to you, Mr. Speaker. Unity of purpose will help us, Mr. Speaker. Unity of purpose. If we have the same aims and the same objectives, and not a matter of one-man-upship, or not a matter of looking at, we have to look at the health workers, that they give a labor of love. And if we understand that, and if you understand that, the country will benefit, Mr. Speaker. The other part of the credit is a $6.5 million for operating overdraft. Overdraft, which speaks for itself, fluctuates. The member social knows very well about it. Fluctuates, so it'll give the OKU and the complex some more flexibility in that paying the debts, etc. Give them some more flexibility, and then the $150,000 of credit card, Mr. Speaker, again to give them more flexibility, for them to buy some urgent purchases on credit card. So all in all, Mr. Speaker, it's another investment in the health of the nation. Another major investment, $23.5 million. And last week again, we borrowed some money. We allowed St. Jude Hospital to get some money to improve their quality of care at St. Jude, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, this is just a drop in the ocean as to what is needed for the complex, Mr. Speaker. It's estimated that we may need some $52 million to get it functioning to a real top-class global center, about $52 million. We've got $23 million now, albeit $11 million does not belong to us. $11 million is to pay a debt, but that's a start. And I want to thank the staff at the hospital, the staff at the Ministry of Health, Mr. Speaker, for the work they're doing at the Millennium Heights Complex, particularly the OKU, and to ask the public to be patient and respectful. Patient and respectful, because it's not an easy job, not an easy task, and I ask the public to be patient. It's a work in progress. We are gradually improving the conditions at the hospital, and as you see, the government is putting where its money, where its mouth is, by borrowing for the people of St. Lucia, which is the theme and the motto of our government. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to guarantee a line of credit from First National Bank St. Lucia Limited, the bank, to Millennium Heights Medical Complex in the amount of EC $23.050 million, consisting of A, an overdraft limit of EC $6.5 million to assist with working capital requirements, B, a loan of EC $5 million to assist with operational expenses for the purchase of new equipment, C, a loan of EC $11.4 million to satisfy a debt of the Ministry of Finance, and D, a corporate credit card with a limit of EC $150,000 to assist with monthly expenses. Be it further resolved that A, for the overdraft limit of EC $6.5 million. The term of the overdraft is for 12 months. Interest is payable at 6% per annum, subject to a change in line with the general level of interest rates. Excess rate of 17%. For the loan of EC $5 million, the term of the loan is 180 months. Repayment is $36,985 monthly, with effect from 1 month after drawdown, with the last payment plus any outstanding principal and interest due 180 months after full drawdown. Interest is payable at a rate of 4% per annum, subject to a change in line with the general level of fluctuating rates. C, for the loan of EC $11.4 million, the term of the loan is for 180 months. Repayment is for $84,324 monthly, with effect from 1 month after drawdown, if the last payment plus any outstanding principal and interest due 180 months after full drawdown. Interest is payable at a rate of 4% per annum, subject to a change in line with the general level of fluctuating rates. D, for the credit corporate credit card, if a limit of EC $150,000, repayment is monthly and interest is payable in accordance with Visa terms and conditions. The member for Vieux-Fort South.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, may I start off my short contribution on this matter by first of all expressing thanks and appreciation to those members who have extended their concern and who have extended words of comfort following the recent events in my constituency in the past few days. I am aware of the wider implications of these events, not just for my constituency of Vieux-Fort South, but for our country as a whole. And I think it is obviously very wise to put this issue in a broader context. But the people of Vieux-Fort are well known for being exceedingly resilient. They have gone through so many episodes in their lives, and they have been able to emerge stronger and better and more united. And I'm certain you will see evidence of that in the future. Mr. Speaker, for my part, there is very little in this resolution to query, to express anxieties, except just a few items. And it is in fact a very good thing that we are seeing substantial expenditure in matters of health to deal with the outstanding problems that have occurred. But I want to take my departure, Mr. Speaker, in respect of the item that involves the payment of a substantial sum of money to the consultancy extended to the Indian company to manage the transition process from Victoria Hospital to the Owen King EU Hospital. Now, Mr. Speaker, the member for Castries East wisely drew attention to the amount that was being paid to the Indian consultants for this contract. And he pointed out that in fact the amount was US $4.6 million, but what I think he failed to emphasize was that it was 4.65 million per annum. And when that is translated into EC dollars, we are talking about, I think, approximately $12.55 million EC dollars per annum, so that in effect, for a 2-year contract, you are paying approximately $25 million. Yeah, so really, this is a huge sum, a huge sum. And we must take a pin there and dwell on this for a few moments. The member for Castries East is also correct, Mr. Speaker, in pointing out that before the former government departed office following the general elections in 2016, a transition team under the leadership of Dr. Stephen King had been appointed to oversee the transition from Victoria Hospital to the Owen King EU Hospital. Now, if my memory serves me right, Dr. King was contracted and paid a stipend or salary of $12,000 per month. In fact, his emoluments was cast at what a grade 21 permanent secretary would receive. And if my mathematics serves me right, Dr. King would have been paid $144,000 per year to manage the transition from Victoria Hospital to the Owen King EU Hospital. Now, when you look at that cost as against the $12.55 million per year that we are dealing with, the question that arises is whether this was not an abuse, whether this was not an example of excess, whether this is not a matter that should attach liability because it is irrational, it defies logic. Mr. Speaker, when I received the draft contract and perused the contract, I moved from looking at the amount, the value of the contract paid to this group from India, and I understand they are affiliated to the Cayman Group, what we would describe as the Cayman Group, and then turned immediately to the expected outcomes of the consultancy. And there is so much in this contract to examine and to look at, and I don't understand how public officers could sign contracts like this on behalf of the government of Lucia without appropriate scrutiny. Now, if you look at some of the things, Mr. Speaker, that you can look at page, I think, 23, where is it? You could look at page 20, I believe. Let's go back. And look at the things that they are supposed to do under this contract. It starts, in fact, from page 20 to be precise. Annex A talks of the move of Victoria Hospital to Owen King EU Hospital. And look at one, continual assessment of the physical readiness of the OK EU Hospital. The inspection of all medical equipment and non-medical assets which have already been procured and installed. Ongoing revision and updating of the move plan. Space optimization and workflow efficiency planning for the Owen King EU Hospital, and to develop a site plan map reflecting the location of all services which will fit into the St. Lucia National Mental Wellness Center. And you keep on going. I'm not going to repeat all of it, but look at this. Look at under Human Resources Management and Training at page 21. Review the available human resource capacity both from skill set and resource bandwidth perspective. Fancy language, but who on earth can do that? Then it goes down. Provide advice and make recommendations to the board on key appointments to vacant posts in the structure of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. Propose a human resource plan. I ask you, Mr. Speaker, which human resource specialist in St. Lucia cannot do these things? Why do you need a Cayman group? Why do you need consultants from India to come to St. Lucia to train St. Lucians in human resources to advise and recommend on these matters? And you are paying them, as is said by the member from Catchphrase Central, $1 million a month. Now, Mr. Speaker, I can go on. Quality improvement and operations, it speaks about management financial systems. If you look at biomedical management system, talks about the procedures, the staff and structures, etc., etc. Then it talks about the facilities management system on page 23. Facilities management system, maintenance information system, staffing capacity, human resource requirements, financial risk, auditing, etc. Then you know what is laughable, Mr. Speaker? Go to page 24, Mr. Speaker, for me. And look at, Mr. Speaker, item 5, develop, coordinate, and execute a communications plan and strategy to internal and external stakeholders for information. And look at 1. The development of a detailed communication plan in conjunction with the contracting authority through the Department of Health and Wellness and the board to ensure that the hospital staff, the public and hospital clientele are fully informed at every stage of the commissioning process to minimize staff and public distress and anxieties, and to advising on the content, design, and layout of press releases and notices to the public and internal memos for staff at OKEU. This is a withering, a blistering indictment of the capacity of persons who are involved in communications in this country. This is contempt. This document is really saying that all of those persons in communications in St. Lucia, including the newspaper editors, are incompetent to communicate to the people of St. Lucia about issues at OKEU, and you therefore need people from all the way from India, a country whom I admire deeply and greatly, Mr. Speaker. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. But that does not mean, Mr. Speaker, that when I see abuse and excess, and when nationals of another country are involved in these matters, they should not be called out. And I'm pretty sure, Mr. Speaker, oh, you can tell me you are appointing people, paying them $1 million a month, $12.55 million a year. And part of their job is to advise management on communications and the issuance of press releases, among other things. You tell me, Mr. Speaker, whether ordinary qualified St. Lucians are not capable of doing it, whether they labor or they slumber, whatever their perspectives may be. It's immaterial to me at this stage. Immaterial to me, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want you to reflect on this and then go back to this issue of the transition team that was appointed under the direction of Dr. King. I recall it because I was the center of it. I negotiated it. It was understood, Mr. Speaker, that Dr. King would work very closely with the medical authorities in Martinique and the EU as a whole to manage that transition. We were not going to be doing it on our own, but there were strategic reasons why we were embracing the OKEU, why we were linking the OKEU to Europe, because we had an agreement with the EU that St. Lucian medical practitioners would undergo further training in Europe so that they can come back even better equipped. And the Europeans were clear that St. Lucians must manage their own transition. They understood that. And it was also clear that we had to enter into a strategic partnership with the health authorities in Martinique. That is why to this day I urge our Minister of Health to move with haste, visit Martinique officially, and build on the history of cooperation we have had with Martinique. We must do it, and do it quickly. Because Martinique has just invested in a massive building to accommodate some modern technology that will in fact be the future guide to clinical assessment of patients, which I was sharing with the member from Sozel's Solibus earlier today. And I want to urge the Minister of Health not to waste any further time, that he must move with alacrity to strengthen that bond, and there has to be an agreement between Martinique and St. Lucia very quickly, so that we can in fact gain access to that technology, but in a disciplined and structured way that deals with the issue of the past. But my point is that if those transitional arrangements had been pursued as had been planned, then we would have been on our way and would not have been faced now to honor a contract of doubtful usefulness, validity, and necessity, and this amounts to a colossal waste of public funds. This should not have happened. Now, at that point, Mr. Speaker, I want to remind you of the debate last week because of the connections. At a certain point in that debate last week, Mr. Speaker, the member from Miku South, and I am very sorry he's not here to hear me. He seems to miss me when I need him the most. Yes. I don't understand this. But a member from Miku South shouted out in response to some innocuous comment from a member on the government side. And he shouted out, don't forget that the only political party, the only government that has been found to have committed maladministration is the former Labour government. He said that. He said, I can't remember which one of the honourable members here provoked him to have reached that point, or whether it was a point of exasperation because of the onslaught that was on the way. I can't remember who was the culprit, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, in politics we must let sleeping dogs lie. Oh, yes. Don't go where perhaps you will face the greatest degree of injury. And I believe the member for Castries North understands that full well, so there are certain topics he stays away from. That's right. Yeah. And quite often we are pains to say, do not open doors or windows because you're providing opportunities. Now, I said nothing at the time, Mr. Speaker, but recorded the response of the member for Miku South. And today I want to really ask a pertinent question. As a member for Miku, for Beaufort South, I want to ask the government, when will the member from Miku South be held to account for the colossal wastage of public funds in the country? When will that happen? Because what has happened with the OKU hospital is just one of several examples of money that could have been used for the benefit of the people of St. Lucia, but for which we are now deriving no benefit at all. I have no roads in Cedar Heights and Beaufort. My roads are terrible. My roads need to be repaired. $11 million would have gone a long way to deal with those problems, Mr. Speaker. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? When are we going to hear what the details are of this vaccine purchase? $7 million to a Barbadian company, ostensibly to import vaccines for COVID. Vaccines never delivered. I understand 3 or 4 million have been paid. Why is the government reluctant to share the full information with members of the public? Now, Mr. Speaker, I am saying those things. You know, Mr. Speaker, history has a way of coming back and claiming you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I am a great believer in this thing called karma, you know. It'll catch up, it catches up with you. You do evil, it'll catch up with you. You say evil things, it'll catch up with you. It must catch up with you. Especially when you see the persons against whom these things are addressed are blessed, Mr. Speaker. I'm blessed. I am fully blessed, Mr. Speaker. And I'm so happy and grateful for being blessed. Because, you know, Mr. Speaker, so much of what has been done in the past, so much, Mr. Speaker, of what has been, shall we say, divine, so much of what has been done, so many of the initiatives that we have embarked on are things that have become of immense value to this country today. I mean, I don't want to tell tales out of court because sometimes members have to speak in private. But only this morning I was chatting with a member in this house and we were discussing the sheer impact of the home caregivers program and what it means to the elderly in this country. And the government that I led is the one who introduced that program. We were talking about how it is so easily abused and how ungrateful some people may be. He was talking about, Mr. Speaker, what the $500 grant to people meant when school opened. And he was talking about the impact, for example, laptops now having education because we had the foresight to introduce those things. See, Mr. Speaker? They can say what they want about me, but my legacy and my memory will endure. I'm blessed. There's a fundamental goodness, Mr. Speaker. But you know, Mr. Speaker, I say all of this to say when the government I led had to honor a guarantee to the famous Hyatt Hotel, the so-called Rochebelle, of $14.5 million US. Remember what I went through, Mr. Speaker. Remember the abuse that was heaped on me. What was said about me. Remember the accusations that were made, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, you want to invoke the so-called finding of maladministration of a guarantee of $14.5 million. I'm not going to comment on that report and what I think, but there's a certain letter I will read to the House, not today, but in due course, in my possession, where that is concerned. We'll leave that for 10 days. But you know, Mr. Speaker, how is it that the member for Miku South can sit in this chamber, make a comment like that, knowing full well his own history and a history in a matter of 5 years? I don't think that the message emanating from members of Castries Central has been understood, and some of it bears repetition. And I'm going to need the help of the members of the House as I go through those things, because you see, you can't sit in a chair and brazenly accuse others when you yourself have an unenviable history and has engaged in the most reckless, the most abusive of behavior in public expenditure in this country in 5 years. And there are people who want to save you and protect you and say you're a person of vision, that you have good intentions for the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, I spoke of the COVID vaccine and whether the government has obtained the balance of the money, and the government must come and tell us what the situation is and whether any action is going to be taken to ensure that the money is returned to the people of St. Lucia. The member for Castries Central spoke on the last occasion of the sale of the Dahem Mall for $13 million when the predecessor government under the stewardship of the then Prime Minister Stephenson King had in fact paid $55 million, and the successor government had to borrow money from then CIBC to pay for the loan incurred for the purchase of that building. You sell it, you turn around, you sell it for $13 million. And nothing.
That's his legacy. Recklessness.
But I believe that the member for Castries South, you come into office, you find an agreement to construct a hotel. What's the name of the company again? Help me. Range. You don't like range. You don't like the people. The people not expecting the offer of the deal you're making. What you do? You deliberately breach the contract. Stop the development which could have benefited this country. And what do? What do? You end up having to pay them $32 million, and you want to tell me that you're the best Minister of Finance this country has ever had, and there are civil servants who encouraged it, allowed it. I have no brief for any civil servants. They're as destructive as some politicians because they sat and they allowed those things to happen. I've said to civil servants, your best protector is not your politician, not your minister, but the Constitution of this country. That's where the protection is. That is why you have to remain neutral. And that is why you have a responsibility to the country when that kind of abuse takes place. But I wanted to talk about Rochamel. But Rochamel had a cabinet conclusion though. They all saw the cabinet conclusion because it was circulated to them, so they knew full well what was in Rochamel, that there was no secret behind it. They knew full well. And you're going to pay $32 million. But that's not even the whole story, because the same thing, I'm sure the member for Castries Central, the member for Castries North would remember what occurred with the Black Bay lands in this country. Enter into an agreement, supposedly with the Hyatt Hotel. You made an agreement that would have said that the lands would have been leased for the hotel or whatever the case is. You decide, no, you want shares in it. And what happened? The thing collapsed. And the former Labour government had, Mr. Speaker, to buy back those lands. They were in liquidation. Over $45 or $48 million was spent. It's a disease. It is a disease. It is a disease. And you want to come and tell me about my handling of the financial affairs of this country for the 3 terms that I served this country as their Prime Minister? Why? $14.5 million US dollars? Huh? But how can a minister of finance justify entering a contract of $30 million to an individual called Lockerbie, supposedly to develop playing fields? Now, I want you all to help me, because what you need to do for me, Mr. Speaker, I want us to so far, let us do the addition. The COVID vaccine, 7 million. The diamol, 13 million. Then, of course, the payment to range. And, of course, now we are dealing with the Lockerbie issue of 30 million to build those artificial turfs. We coming there. And you know, Mr. Speaker, I drive up and down to my constituency from time to time, and all those who say what they're saying, understand that if this honorable gentleman was minded to contest the fourth seat again, they'll be crying again. But that's not my desire, Mr. Speaker. When you say they're saying what they're saying, you know, they can come and face the music, you know. But you know, I see the use of that turf. I see the use of that turf in Miku North. You hardly see anybody that during the day except late afternoon, and you can come and tell me that this is a good project and should be replicated. I want them don't touch the Vieux-Fort field, and the good thing they didn't. They went to Soufriere instead because there was an accommodating parliamentary representative, and the member for Sozel made it absolutely clear that no Lockerbie is coming to his field in Sozel, you know. So $30 million almost gone up in dust. I don't know how much of that amount will the Minister of Finance tell us. How much of that amount is still outstanding for Lockerbie, and whether that amount will be reclaimed? What is the position with Mr. Lockerbie? I want to find out if he's going to walk away with that 30 million. Now, Mr. Speaker, you heard the testimony from the member from Castries North. And I know the member from Castries North and other members heard me in opposition days when I raised the matter of the expenditure for the foundation of the box at St. Jude's. I said in the House at the time that the Ministry of Infrastructure had, Mr. Speaker, estimated the foundation works at 3 million, but it ended up costing 9 million without the intervention, the advice, and the direction of the Ministry of Infrastructure. Now, what do you call this, Mr. Speaker? Is this not negligence, financial recklessness? And I'm not even talking about, Mr. Speaker, the trails, where that money went and to do what, and who received it, and where it was eventually located, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, we seem to have forgotten the matter of the amount of money paid to Ernst & Young and this Malaysian company to give advice to the government, etc. To this day, Mr. Speaker, I have never understood what were the changes that were brought to the budgetary procedure in this country by Ernst & Young. What are the changes? I see the civil servants doing the very same thing they've been doing for years, and I'm not saying it should not change. But, Mr. Speaker, when you add those amounts, and we have not been told yet what is the full amount that was actually spent on Ernst & Young. The question I'm really asking is whether a Minister of Finance should get away with all of these excesses, the recklessness that has occurred in this country, and how can we sit comfortably and justify that kind of recklessness, Mr. Speaker.
I want a copy of that storybook for my life.
Mr. Speaker, and I'm not finished, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have come to this house, authorized borrowing to construct a new terminal building at Vieux-Fort South. Despite all the pleading and best advice, what do? We go, or the former government go and decide to construct an airport next to a floodplain next to the Vieux-Fort River, Mr. Speaker. Every Vieux-Fortian knows that area is highly susceptible to flooding. Every Vieux-Fortian. You know why? Because the natural course of the river for years, from the earliest days of settlement, was in fact across the river straight down to the sea. What you go? They decided to lengthen the runway and divert the river. But every time you have heavy floods, it rains and sometimes water sweeps that area. How are you going? You go decide you're going to put an airport building there. What do? You decide you have to put those deep pillars into the ground. What do you call it again?
Piles.
Piles, yes. They call them piles.
And the advisor to your king. You heard? Listening?
I'm listening. That's why I'm not saying anything, because I want to listen carefully. I want to digest what you just said, because I know I'm coming to it. Now, Mr. Speaker,
To your king, your advisor.
the travesty is this, and this is being contested, You decide to go and put piles. The geotechnical reports warn that this is an area prone to floodplain, prone to floods. Piles that were supposed to cost 13 million now end up costing 44.5 million or thereabouts. And you want to tell me that this matter of cost overruns is a phenomenon that they only know about former administration? What is that, Mr. Speaker? What do you call that? What really you call all of it? And then St. Jude Hospital? We debated this matter of St. Jude Hospital, on the last occasion, the colossal wastage of money that has gone there. Does this country really understand what happened? How you could have spent $80 million to construct a box the way you did? 100 and what? 118 or 108? Oh, 180, that's the real cost. How can you have done this, Mr. Speaker? And it's 118. Yes, and it's not even complete. And remember, and no roof, all of that. And remember, in this house, I warned them. I warned them about it. Why? Because we had under our belts the experiences associated with OKEU, and we warned. And I recall when I used to speak about this matter, the member for Castries North would sit over there and he would nod in approval. I warned them. And you go and spend that amount of money. The opportunity cost of the 118 million, your debt portfolio has shot up. You can't find money to complete the rest. The people are left without a hospital. What do you call these things? Are these not symptoms of a deeper and more complex malaise? Are we not dealing with a disease of a certain kind? How is it that a country could have been held to ransom by a prime minister and a minister of finance to the extent that occurred in the last 5 years? What happened to the checks and balances that we created over the years that it could not stop that kind of abuse, that kind of recklessness in this country? The recklessness, Mr. Speaker, that will allow you to pay $22 million to issue, among other things, press releases about what is taking place at the Owen King EU Hospital, when St. Lucians have not been given the benefit of the equipment that they need in their hospitals, the drugs that they need, and you are spending that amount of money to engage consultants and civil servants. Don't repudiate this and say to the government, stay away from that. So who's responsible? Him alone? Who's responsible? Mr. Speaker, I don't know what better examples of negligence and civil liability that you can find than what I have adumbrated here today. And we're going to let it pass? Wipe it away. Just as we always do, you know how? Don't worry, man. The politicians are always saying something. I mean, and then you hear them, no, the future, forget the past. Forget the past. As if the past don't carry its liability and the past don't carry its debts. When everything that we are doing today, coming, for example, to this house to ask for the approval to borrow these sums of money, is a direct consequence of what occurred in the past. How then can you ignore the past and pretend that the past don't exist? When will this country stand up and say, this is right, this is wrong, this is acceptable, this is unacceptable? Since when we have lost our moral appetite for casting judgment and condemning where condemnation is deserved, applauding where the right things are done? This country is at moral crossroads. I'm now convinced. We are at moral crossroads, and we have to determine what is right that we must do for this country and what is wrong. We have to determine who is responsible for ensuring that what is right is done, and who must bear liability when what is right, when wrong is committed, and what has to be done. So, Mr. Speaker, I am sorry that the honorable member is not here today, because I really would have wanted to invite him once again to give a very structured and logical defense to everything that I've said, because I opened the doors wide for him. I said, come. This is what I'm saying to you. This is what I accuse you of. And come and reply to us and give us that opportunity to hear what you have to say in your defense. Having said this, Mr. Speaker, I want to touch on one item in this resolution, and that is this corporate credit card with a limit of $150,000 to assist with monthly expenses. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the government, I want to urge the Minister of Finance to issue a public statement in due course regarding the issuance of corporate credit card to state agencies, to departments, to permanent secretaries, and others. You know, this is important, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, the government has to update its approaches to financial management, and in this new era we are in, credit cards are in wide usage. You know that. I mean, the reality in St. Lucia is already that the vast majority of people have to be using debit cards to go conduct their business. The banks are compelling them, and I'll come to the banks on the credit reporting matter, Mr. Speaker. But the guidelines in the civil service are not clear. When I am told, Mr. Speaker, that a former Prime Minister and a member of this House was issued with a credit card which he used with impunity to accumulate substantial amount of debt, seemingly uncontrollably, I have to say, what are the guidelines for the issuance of credit cards to ministers, to departments, etc.? Now, I'm not saying this in criticism, but I'm saying that it is a lacune in our financial management systems that we need to clarify and declare. I'm not against the issuance of credit cards, but it's the potential impunity with which such credit cards may be used. And we must know what they are. Who qualifies for a credit card? What is the amount? And that must be stated very, very clearly to avoid that kind of impunity. So when I see that a corporate credit card will be issued for $150,000 to assist with monthly expenses, I'm compelled to ask, well, what are the circumstances? What are these monthly expenses that are going to be engaged by the OKEU to require a corporate credit card? And how is it that this is outside of the usual controls of the public service and civil service? How that happened? And so in that respect, I think it would be helpful at some point in the future when the policy regarding corporate credit cards are clarified for the benefit of the public as a whole. And so, Mr. Speaker, we have to record another sad day in this country, as we have been over the last few days in respect of the foresight, but in this matter, my deep sadness of what has happened with OKEU Hospital over the years. And you are asking why? I'm sad, Mr. Speaker. I'm sad, Mr. Speaker, because, Mr. Speaker, I've said before, this hospital means a lot to me personally. But it's the government that I led that secured the money for it, sorted the design, sorted the site where it is. And all of those who talk about legacy, it is there. But, Mr. Speaker, I have a personal stake in it. I'm aware that the Europeans, Mr. Speaker, have said that never again will they ever make funds available to any government in the region for an investment of that size and that scale. But you know what? Look at where we are today because we simply did what was wrong. Simply accommodated abuse and recklessness. And the reality is that all of us are guilty in what happened in the last 5 years in this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Castries South.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House stands suspended until 3:15.
Honorable members, the question is that this House do stand suspended until 3:15 p.m. And now with the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Sitting suspended.
All right.